Hello and welcome to Vision Denial. My name is Sam, and it's day 7 of groups. For those who don't know, I've watched every single playoff game of summer 2022, yes, including that one, and I take this particular show to review every single day of Worlds so far. And with the round 2 of Group C, we say goodbye to Top Esports. Shocker. Actual shocker. And GAM Esports. Only personal shocker to me. The inconsistency of this group is laudable? That's not the word. Is surprising. As a lot of the teams dropped games in places that we were not expecting them to drop and got games in places we didn't get them. Especially given the previous week. Well, without further ado, let's take a look at everything that we review. Also, those particular reviews, I will also put them on my TikTok channel. You can take a look of that down below. Without further ado, let's take a look to those games. Our first game of the day, we have Rogue, the first seed of the LEC, versus GAM Esports, the first seed of the VCS. GAM had a solid early game plan, and this time didn't throw it. Managing to garner tempo, pace, and map pressure leads. Their vision was stronger, overall better neutral setup, consistency, and they knew where to attack the win conditions for Rogue. The issue is here, all roles outside of jungle was being outmatched by Rogue. Stronger and stronger leads developed as they garner stronger goal generation, and no matter what angle you looked at this, Levy being the only player that can deal damage is not going to help you in the long run of the game. The vision from Rogue was lackluster, allowing themselves to be caught frequently, but it doesn't seem like it was going to be an issue this game, as GAM had more and more issues approaching the range that was drafted. My MVP goes to Malrong, who, even while behind, held so much impact on the pace of the fights and gave a lot of space for his team to play things out. Our second game of the day, we have GAM Esports, the first seed of the VCS, versus Top Esports, the second seed of the LPL. And you'll notice, GAM never got a gold lead. Ever. This was a hype game. They never had a gold lead or the map pressure or even stronger revision play or denial. What they did have was full tempo control and a solid understanding of their win conditions. Top fell behind the tempo, always answering play, and while GAM are still losing in gold and map pressure, Top just didn't translate it in a significant way. Then the late game comes in and neither side cares about gold, just who has access to Baron or the Elder Drake. The fight comes up, and GAM keep winning them over and over again, while still being far down in gold. They have control of the Elder Drake, and boom, Jakulov steals it. Every play has to be perfect from GAM if they just want to, and they do it. And there's maybe 300 HP left on their Nexus, and Levy gets my MVP for this game, for how much work came from his Karthus play, as they brought in probably one of the larger upsets of the tournament. Our third game of the day is DRX, the fourth seed of the LCK, versus Rogue, the first seed of the LEC. This was surgical and airtight from DRX, who played this matchup perfectly. Rogue came in with some cheeky options, hoping to nullify the expected pressure, but found themselves losing out early, and from there, the onus is on DRX to just play it out correctly. Which they did. Near perfect vision approach, solid goal generation, never giving up neutrals, and overall suffocating Rogue of all resources. Rogue couldn't be proactive no matter how hard they tried, and like that, DRX didn't have to be proactive because the gold lead just balloon from how much of the map they controlled. My MVP for this game is Beryl, who was just a nuisance throughout the game and zoned them out nicely. Our fourth game of the day, we have DRX, the fourth seed of the LCK, versus GAM Esports, the first seed of the VCS. GAM impresses more and more with their early game play and teamfight prowess. But DRX impresses even more with their understanding of the map play, vision, and side lane controls with the neutral setups on top of it. The list goes on and on. This Heimerdinger pick keeps baiting teams into bizarre counters, and while I like the bizarre counters, they aren't used in a way that allows the rest of the team to not fall behind in some way. And DRX knows that opting to attack into two places while losing in one during this kind of draft that they have. I also think that they were the best team to understand that GAM did not have enough gold to fight all the time and apply side lane control, being the only team to actually use their 1-3-1 draft so far to really push the game state ahead. Even if I think the early game is rather slow from them, the fact that they are not only answering but also contesting every play means that in moments where they have the proactive approach, they will hold a lot more control. My MVP for this game goes to Def, not only for the wild arrows in the early game, but also for the amount of pressure he added to sieges and teamfights. Our fifth game of the day, we have Top Esports, the second seed of the LPL, versus Rogue, the first seed of the LEC. Dear Lord, was that ever so one-sided from Top? They created so much pressure, pushed the leads, established so quickly, and Rogue just never found an opportunity to answer. Where was this Top just in the previous 4 games they played? The vision play, side lane control, wave management, team fighting, laning, it was just leagues above what Rogue had going on, which is so frustrating. Rogue, for their part, attempted more proactive plays themselves, but aspects of their inconsistencies are leaking through this time. Their timidness, disjointed approaches, bizarre map movement. I'm just baffled at the range of play these two teams decided to show today. Hopefully Rogue can course correct before the quarterfinals, because if this is what we get, not a great sign from them. My MVP for this game is Mark, who hooks really looked like they were point and click abilities and not skill shots. Our sixth game of the day is Top Esports, the second seed of the LPL, versus DRX, the fourth seed of the LCK. It's rather unfortunate to see Top play so incredibly well despite the first game of the day. What if scenarios here see us at a 3-way tie, but the fumbles versus GAM means that we have them eliminated despite how strong they looked in this game. DRX had full control of the early game, map movements, neutral controls, hell, even the lanes were playing better, but the consistent skill checks from Top Esports as they steal 2 Drakes back to back, allowing them more and more map control, DRX were just unable to really play around the vision disparity and overall pressure established, and where we saw one team play immaculate macro struggle to even answer a 1-4 pressure from Top. I got to say, this group has been frustrating, but it has created tense and exciting games. My MVP for this game is Xian, whose outplays and stronger smites created the conditions that allowed them to gain the advantages and win, and also establishing the tiebreaker. Our last game of the day is DRX, fourth seed of the LCK, versus Rogue, the first seed of the LEC, and the tiebreaker for the first seed of the qualifiers. This was one of the cleanest games at Worlds so far. Rogue drafted something with very little engage tools, with the hope of possibly matching the siege and side lane pressures, but once the early game went even and lanes were not in their favor, DRX pushed harder and harder to accelerate the pace of the game in ways that Rogue just didn't know how to answer. This is what Caitlyn games look like when things go perfectly, and that's just the thing. Things went smoothly for DRX despite the fact that they had a lack of proactivity from their part. The inconsistent nature of their play so far during the day is worrisome, but the coordination and wave management around side lanes has been excellent. Having that with minor tweaks to their early game, and I could see them doing very well during the best of five. Not something I can really say for Rogue here, who have shown a lot of their limits today. My MVP for this game is Zeka, whose roams and influences created so many issues for Rogue. This was a rather hype game, or a hype day in general for the games themselves, but also equally frustrating across the board. I remember when trying to do the pick'ems and explaining my stance regarding this particular group, having this be the hardest group to really predict what was going to go on, mostly because top is such an incredibly volatile team that will skill check at any given point, so it's really hard to tell what's going to happen. DRX was already showing incredible inconsistencies throughout. I know that I've been called out in terms of like the inconsistencies of Rogue, but Rogue during the playoffs is very different from their regular season, and their limitations that were like called out during the playoffs, and the fact that they were not as well coordinated in every single one of their games shows up here again. And GAM, who usually play so dominant but are usually hard to really like push their kinds of advantages if they're called out early game, this could have gone in any of the 8 directions that this could have gone. Really could have. Right? Or I think it's 16. It really, I can't, yeah, it's 16 combinations that it could have gone. And I couldn't have faulted anybody from using the coin flip or even just going with their gut and what they believed in. Because no one really expected Rogue to go 3-0. I know that some people eliminated GAM from their perspective. To me, I thought that would have been foolish. I could have seen GAM edge things out. To me, this was so close that it could have just gone anywhere. Hell, GAM proved it in the first 3 games that they had plays that they were going to challenge at any given corner. DRX surprised and yet come to this day and they get really royally checked by top. And Rogue with the same thing, having lost 3 of the 4 games they played today, is not a good sign. This is now 9-1 for Europe. To put that in perspective, Rogue lost 3 games. In the same way that all of the other European teams are eliminated from Worlds, and Rogue lost that many games, and yet with 1 win, off they go. This group is the volatile group. And with that, going into the best of 5s, I don't count them out right off the bat. I think Rogue will have a harder time. Their drafts and their champion pools are questionable in terms of how much flexibility they actually have overall. While as DRX, if Pyosha can actually like focus and be proactive more often, or they use Juhan in the events that he can't, yeah, I could totally see them doing well. I could. But the fact of the matter is that they're still a very slow team. And with the high-paced nature of how a lot of these teams play, and looking at the other 2 seeds that are, or the other 2 teams that are in seeds 2, I can see them having a really hard time. Either of these teams, I didn't think anybody from Group C was likely going to win Worlds. People should not have expected that. But I can see this still, any of the teams would have had a hard time in the best of 5. And these teams just so happen to be the more consistent ones at the end of the day. It is what it is. Also, every game on blue side won. It's the only non-volatile thing that happened with this group. There's not much more thought to this, right? Other than like top esports, and if I want to rant about the format again, top esports could have been a 3rd seed for a lower bracket, and we would have seen more of them and their performances in best of 5s, because they're very good in best of 5s. think that's the exception to this group. This is a very good best of 5 team. I would have really liked to see that. I would have liked to really see the third seeds of all of these particular groups like have a lower bracket, or if in the top bracket the losers go against them and then just climb up. That would have been excellent. But at this current moment, shouting to the void in terms of everybody really doesn't like the format for Worlds, but until Riot changes it for next year when they do the announcement, this is what we get. Those are my thoughts for this particular one. Very easy, wild and chaotic. I want to hear what you have to think. Do you think this group was actually a lot more set and sold for some of you? Or did you agree in terms of like this could have gone in any direction? I would have loved to hear any of your thoughts in the comments down below, even if you also want to chime in about how do you think the Rogue and DRX are going to do in the best of 5s? Do you agree with me, or are they going to like have a hard time? And if you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. I have other videos over here on the sides of the other teams that are at Worlds and the other days that I've covered so far. We got one more day of groups. And with that, I'll see you next time. I really appreciate your watching this. Have a good one.